Hi everyone, I'm Pranoti, host of Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials or nanoscience, who tweets from the Real Scientists Nano Twitter account, which is realsci_nano. Hi everyone, my name is Pranoti. I am the host of Under the Microscope podcast, and today we have with us Leah Nienhaus, who is an assistant professor at Florida State University in the US. Hi Leah, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Excited to talk to you about your journey, about your science, about like lots of other things, because I think your science is super interesting. So let's get started with understanding your career, knowing more about your career journey so far. So how did you end up being an assistant professor at Florida State University? Tell us.
Well, I guess my journey started roughly when I outgrew the ballerina phase of my life. So I was very young when I decided that I was going to be a chemist. Mm-hmm. So I got my bachelor's in chemistry from the University of Ulm in Germany. Mm-hmm. From there, I went off and started my PhD at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Mm-hmm. Then I moved to MIT to do my postdoc, where I really got involved with these nanomaterials and optical spectroscopy of them. Mm-hmm. And then in 2018, I moved on to Florida State and started my own independent group where I've basically brought the expertise of both scanning tunneling microscopy, which was my PhD work, and optical spectroscopy, which was my postdoc work, together. And the rest is history.
That is awesome. I'm very happy about the fact that there is some sort of connection between you and me, that I'm now in Germany and you come from Germany. So I just feel like that is like, wow. But no, your research and your career journey it's the definition of traveling scientist, I feel. It's like, okay, PhD in one country, postdoc in a completely different lab, and then starting a group in a completely different lab, like kilometers, thousands of kilometers apart, probably. I don't know the distance between MIT and the Florida State University, but yeah, I'm assuming it's quite a lot.
Yeah, 20 hours by car.
Oh, wow. That is a lot of distance. But no, that is a very inspiring career journey you have so far, because I'm sure your career will, who knows where you will end up next. So what I would like to understand from you, Leah, is more on the scientific side of things. You already mentioned a bit about your research, your current work. So my question is, your current work, where does it fit in this big picture of materials and nanoscience with the STM and spectroscopy joining hands? So where does it fit? What kind of questions you solve, or like where does it fit?
So, we use both nanocrystals, bulk semiconductors. Granted, we'll use anything as long as it fluoresces, I think, generally speaking. And so what we're interested in is really understanding energy and charge transfer processes that occur in these materials after illumination with light. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that we're really interested in understanding is the role of localized or nanoscale defects. So, if you think about a quantum dot, people like to say that it is inherently just a defect. So it's a nice little nanocrystal, but it's so riddled with defects that it's just mind-blowing that it even can fluoresce. But we're interested in understanding how these defects play a role in the overall optoelectronic properties, or in the charge transfer process or exciton transfer processes that we're interested in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so what you mentioned in the short podcast as well, how light interacts with matter. Mm-hmm. And when you say matter, it's not just the material, but also the defects and like everything that has to do with the material at a nano or a micro scale, depending on which material you're working with.
And you can also imagine that, the absorption of light not only just, changes or promotes that electron to a higher lying state, but you can also think about possibly a slight deformation in the crystal lattice or something like that. And so those are the questions that we're asking and we're trying to solve. Whether there's a structural change upon light absorption or if it's simply an electronic change, and how, subtle changes in the crystal structure change the properties of the material.
Okay. Wow. That sounds so cool. That sounds very, very cool. And so, Leah, it sounds to me that you have been involved in a lot of interesting research projects. You are at the moment, and hopefully also in the future. But if you have to pick one research project that you're most proud of, and it doesn't have to be a research project that already happened. It could be one of the grants that you're writing right now. Could be, who knows? But if you have to pick one research project, could you pick one and the one that you're most proud of or you're most excited by, and explain it to us in simple words in the section we call In Other Words?
This one's easy to answer. It's our work on perovskite sensitized upconversion. That probably means nothing to anybody at this point, but in other words, we made a device that absorbs red light at 800 nanometers, and then it emits yellow light at 600 nanometers. And if you're familiar with the solar spectrum at all, that means low energy light goes to high energy light, and that's really cool. There are no energy conservation laws violated here. It's a 2 photon in, 1 photon out kind of process, but.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you shine 2 photons on a material. The material somehow eats up one of the photons and only 1 photon gets out. Is it that simple?
Current energy.
Wow. Well, where does the second photon go? I mean, if the material is eating the photon, something must be happening, right?
So both photons are being absorbed, and then in a process called triplet annihilation, these photons basically combine in a way. The excitons they create combine to create that higher energy state that emits the higher energy.
Okay, I'm gonna not put you on a spot here to or subject you to my big question mark on my face with the triplet annihilation and stuff. And I hope that.
Let's call it magic.
Oh, that sounds better. Yeah, magic. Why didn't you say that, Leah? That makes so much sense. Okay, got it. Magic it is. Well, that explains why you chose this as a research project, one of the ones that you're most proud of. But on a serious note, I hope you will explain all of this when you're taking over the account and you will go more into detail and explain the magic.
Yes, we will.
Awesome. All right. So it sounds to me that you're really interested in the research. I mean, getting your hands dirty, metaphorically, of course, because we are always wearing gloves when we are in the lab, and lab coat and all the safety precautions. You really enjoy the research aspect of being a scientist, but there are lots of other aspects to being a scientist or being an assistant professor. So what else do you like about being a scientist?
Okay. Of course, getting my hands dirty is one of my favorite parts of being a scientist, and I do still routinely get my hands dirty in lab. Gloves, of course, especially since all of our materials are cadmium and lead based. I would not touch those with my hands if, But I think one of the best parts of being a scientist, especially in academia, is that I have freedom to pursue my passions and my interests without somebody telling me what to do. So I get to be fairly independent. But also just seeing the students in the lab, my PhD students, how they come in and then just slowly learn about the field. And then, when they near graduation, they're all of a sudden experts in the field. So it's just a fantastic journey to be able to be a part of and to be able to support what hopefully will be our next generation of scientists.
That is so cool. I'm so happy that we have scientists like you who are aware of the next generation who are aware of the responsibility that they have in shaping the future of science by mentoring or guiding the next generation on the correct path. That's really cool. And speaking of which, I'm sure you have lots of advices that you can give to your students and to other scientists around the world. But if you were to start off your journey today as Leah, the scientist, the budding scientist, what advice would you give? Or the scientists who are starting out today, what advice would you give them?
I'd say to never give up. Failing organic chemistry one does not mean, the first time does not mean you're not going to manage to get a PhD, go postdoc and become a professor, or get another great job. So just persevere, keep going. Research is hard. Chemistry classes are hard. Rejection is literally our everyday life. But hopefully it'll all be worth it in the end. So just keep chugging along.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. Like, don't give up, just keep going. The first time, but also be mindful that it's not like you're failing organic chemistry 5 times and then you still go on.
I mean, there's got to be some reason with the whole thing, but just try your best and just keep going. And if chemistry isn't the right thing, then there's always physics or biology or
anything, social working,
anything.
Doesn't matter. Wow. Yeah, that is true. That is true. So, Leah, I hope your research experience in the different labs has been wonderful so far and will continue to be wonderful in the future as well. However, if you had 3 wishes to improve your research experience, what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, and I am very aware of the current phase that you're going through, which is grant deadlines. So I am not giving away your answer. What are your 3 wishes?
Money, money, money. It's what drives research. I think my research experience has just been fantastic. I have the equipment that I, really need. You can always ask for more. Like, yeah, I could ask for like a private synchrotron that I could, build in my backyard. That would be awesome, but that's not happening.
Oh, synchrotron in the backyard. That would be so cool.
Plenty of room out there.
That would be so cool. Or in the basement.
You can always ask for a bigger and a better laser, but at the end of the day, money rules the world. So
money to get all of these toys. Scientific equipment.
Toys, students.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that you need. And I hope, of course, money is you're absolutely right. Money is what drives science. So I hope that from the numerous grants that you are probably writing at the moment, you get most of them, because saying all of them is a bit too unrealistic.
That's too much.
Yeah, we are going to be optimistic, but we are also realists. So I hope you get most of those grants so that there is money coming your way to build your own synchrotron in the backyard. Awesome. So, Leah, thank you very much for speaking with me. This has been wonderful. I do have one last question for you, and I cannot record a podcast in 2022 without referring to some sort of a thing that started in 2020 that basically stopped the entire world. I'm not going to use the P word, I'm not going to use the C word, but you know what I'm talking about. The listeners know what I'm talking about. So what are your learnings from the time that started in year 2020?
Oh, that was such a long time ago. I've tried to, get it out of my mind. 2020 and the following years have been incredibly tough. It feels like it was yesterday, but yet, a decade ago. I think the thing that I've really learned is that it's more important to make sure that my students are doing okay and that their mental health is good than trying to continue to push them in lab. Because only, healthy students are happy students, and only happy students are productive students. I've seen all of the things with the pandemic. One of my students completely blossomed and just, took off like a rocket. Others struggled a bit more with the pandemic. So I think right now it's probably a time to, take a step back and see where the students are at instead of, chastising them for not being done with their project. But maybe, taking 5 minutes to see if they're doing all right. Mental health is the most important thing, because if they, aren't doing well, they're just going to do a bad job in lab in the end, and that won't be any benefit to anybody else either. So I'm hoping that, the C word, the P word, whatever you call it, goes away eventually, or at least becomes tolerable. But I think the effects are still going to be around for many years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you are prioritizing the mental health, because oftentimes the senior scientists responsible for students tend to probably not realize that the students have a lot going on and they're under a lot of pressure and their mental health is suffering. So you are absolutely right that healthy students are the happy students, and happy students are the productive students, because it all does come down to the mental health and physical health also, but mental health is something that is ignored often.
I mean, it's not even fair to say that only the students suffered from mental health. Like, if you've been on Twitter for the last 2 years, you see that basically everybody has struggled.
everyone, yeah, absolutely. But that's a very good learning. That's I wouldn't say a learning, but it just intensified the need to consider other people's mental health, including your students and your peers and your own mental health as well into consideration. So on that positive note, thank you very much, Leah, for speaking with me. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I cannot wait for you to tweet from Real Scientist Nano Twitter account and learn more about your research with STM spectroscopy, kitchen spectroscopy, Cataday, all kinds of things, and also to meet your students, because you mentioned that they will be helping you with the tweeting. So thank you very much, and see you on Twitter then.
Thanks for having me. See you on Twitter.
Thank you for listening. I also want to thank my team, Johanna, who is our news editor and curator liaison, Svenja, who is our podcast engineer and curator liaison, Lucia, who is our media and website coordinator, and myself, Pranoti, being the owner of the Science Talk and host of Under the Microscope. To know more about us, visit our website, thesciencetalk.com, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.